that monastery which we're visiting all the time for Karma.
Alena, so brother monastery,
Chanchurjong, that's what I said. But that is not near Palapur, it's near Gopalpur.
Gopalpur, yeah. Isn't Gopalpur?
Okay, but now we know. So you are all here on a...
We're traveling, we're practicing meditation, sacred movement. I hope we will go up to Triund also. So
To where?
Triund.
Okay.
Yeah. So exploring to be here. Yeah. Yeah. So if you could somehow to support our exploring. Some question, yeah, we can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the first one, maybe I will ask you, because you have a wide view of the things, not just the spiritual Buddhist, but so always very practical for the people. What do you think? How it can be? How we can help each other or to ourselves in this stressful life? So many young people now working in the office. Very, very big stress. So not really enjoying things, but trying to get to reach the goal, even without thinking, to be conscious about what's happening. But it's really the very hard rhythm of the life. And at some point they get disappointed of the things. So how to be inside of this process while it's happening, how we can...
Well, according to The Economist magazine, which is not a Dharma magazine, right? Nowadays, one of the main problems for all organizations is the high stress rate of the employees. And it has been shown, indeed, that, for example, multitasking is very inefficient. Because the human brain is not intended to multitask and to do too many things at the same time. And as a result, people make mistakes. The level of work is very superficial because there's no time to go deeper. And everyone ends up very stressed. And it's not as if they accomplish more. They don't accomplish more. They just become very stressed out with what they are trying to accomplish because they're trying to do too many things at one time. And for this reason, this article was going into modern neuroscience and so forth and saying how they support this, that it's not efficient and helpful to try to do too much at one time and to be pressured. So the article, the conclusion, or how to solve this problem, was that everyone should learn to meditate and take a course in mindfulness. And of course, this is exactly what so many big organizations now are doing, including the army, including prisons, including, big organizations like Google and, Microsoft and so forth. Not because they want their employees especially to be liberated, but they want them to be more efficient and less stressed. So the point is that we need to cultivate in our daily life two basic principles. One is the ability to be aware, to be present. And the other is also the ability to open up the heart and be kind. Because kindness also is a very healing emotion. And to recognize that just as, I would rather be happy and not unhappy, every single being we meet wants to be happy and doesn't want to be unhappy. I mean, our dog, when it's cold, it goes into the sun. When it's hot, it goes into the shade. Why? Because it wants to be comfortable and happy. So all beings want that. And to remember that when we see whoever we are meeting, our work colleagues, our family, even people which are just passing by, to recognize everyone has problems. And everybody would rather feel well within themselves and to wish that for them. So to be kind. To be kind and at the same time to be present, to be aware, to be conscious. If we can do that, then our lives are not nearly so stressful. And our whole life becomes a Dharma practice. Right? It becomes a spiritual practice. What is spiritual practice? It's learning how to be more present, more aware, and have a heart which genuinely feels empathy and love for others. So that way there's no difference between spiritual and worldly life. They're the same thing. In our daily life we cultivate patience. It's a very important quality. Generosity, kindness, compassion, friendliness, joy, appreciation, gratitude, all these good qualities. We need other people to help us to cultivate those. And so also we need challenges in order to make ourselves more strong. So it's
the
good.
stress is also a challenge. Stress is also a challenge.
Well, we can just use our stress to recognize that we're going in the wrong direction. And how to deal with that, to let it go, to inwardly relax. Because if we are aware, genuinely present in the moment, there's no tension, right? The mind becomes very clear and open and spacious. And then things flow in, things flow out without our grasping. The problem is in our mind is that if things are pleasant, we want to grasp them. And if things don't please us, then we want to push them away. Once we become more conscious of that this is always happening to us, then we can let it go. And we can be like an empty house with all the doors and windows open. So the wind comes in, the wind goes out, the birds fly in, the birds fly out. Anything can fly in, but it doesn't catch. Our problem is that we stress the mind because we are always thinking. Most of our thoughts are totally irrelevant, and we don't know how to step back and just observe that the mind is thinking. But this is not me, this is not mine. If we were our thinking mind, then we could not observe it. The fact that we can step back and just observe the thoughts without being swept away by the thoughts, which is what meditation is for, shows that we are not, the thinking mind. The thinking mind is a tool which we should use. It should not use us. In other words, we should not be the servants, the slaves of our conceptual thinking mind. We should be the masters of our mind. And the only way to do that is to step back and observe the mind and recognize we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings. The thoughts and feelings, they come, they go. This is not me. That's why we sit to meditate, because it's much easier when you're sitting quietly to just step back and like a river flowing by, we're not swept along by the river, we are sitting on the banks watching the river. That's what meditation is for. It's not to make us feel calm and good. It often makes us feel worse. But it's to recognize what's going on in our mind, the noise going on there, and this voice endlessly yakking away. And not to be so stifled by that and identified with that, to recognize we are not that thinking mind. We are something beyond that, this pure awareness. So this is the point. And then having cultivated that pure awareness, to take it into our daily life. Then there's no difference between daily life and spiritual practice. They're the same thing. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, very nice.
is why people go on to retreats. I mean, if you cannot take what you practice on your retreat into your daily life, then it's a waste of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. Is emotions a part of mind and thinking process or not, or it's different? Our emotions?
They're very interconnected. I mean, you know, if, for example, we are feeling very angry, that influences very much our thinking, and then our thinking stirs up the emotion of anger, right? So they're very interconnected with each other.
So,
If we're feeling very peaceful inwardly, then we're also, our thoughts are much more peaceful, or if we're feeling jealous, or if we're feeling whatever feeling we have, compassion, or any emotion which comes up, it's very interconnected with our thinking process. This is why it's very important to really examine the thoughts, so that, for example, if suddenly a feeling of anger comes, we don't throw more oil onto the fire. You know, we can see this is anger, and then, you know, deal with it, rather than just be swept along by it, and all our thinking, you know, adding to the problem. So they're very interconnected.
so if we observe these emotions,
Yeah, you
and just
observe them. You see that they're not, you know, feelings can come up. You don't even have to name it. You can just feel it and look at it without, you know, kind of grabbing it. Just observe it. What does it feel like? Where is it coming from? Who is feeling this, right? I mean, so we examine it and look. But if you just look at it nakedly without grasping at it, you can see, really, it's kind of empty energy. And by seeing that, it just of itself transforms into something much more powerful than something negative like anger. But in the meantime, once we recognize, oh, I'm feeling angry, knowing that that doesn't help at all, because the actions of our body, speech, and mind under the influence of negative emotions cause so many problems to ourselves and to others, and it's not what we really want to do. Then when we see that we're feeling angry, the first thing we can do is think, this is not helpful, and try to cultivate patience, forbearance, compassion, whatever, and change the emotion. I mean, we have to be in charge of our own mind. You know, to be slave of our own mind is a very pitiful state. And to recognize that negative emotions are negative. They cause lots of problems, as we know. And later we say things which we're sorry we said, we do things we're sorry we did, because we're not in control, because we are controlled by these negative emotions, which is a very sad situation to be in. And it's so widespread. I mean, a while back I was at this house and they had this book on anger, the dumbest guide to how to overcome anger. And it was this thick. It was so big. Some very, very good techniques, but it shows that this is such a widespread. A lot of the techniques that they were teaching actually were Buddhist techniques, but of course they very wisely didn't mention that it was a religious thing. You know, they just showed these are very different approaches that different people can do that work. But I mean, it's, you know, dealing with our negative emotions, not just our anger, but also our greed and jealousy and, you know, our basic delusion is, you know, a lifetime's work. Many lifetimes' work. So all emotions are not bad. Some emotions are important, like compassion, devotion, love and kindness and so forth. These good emotions are good. So it's not that we become flat with no emotions, but we have to look and recognize those negative emotions and transform those. But first you have to recognize them. It's no good pushing them down and pretending they're not there. It's not suppression. I mean, the first thing we do is recognize, and then to accept that's how I'm feeling, and then how to deal with that.
Well, when brain started making story about this emotion, why, all this, does it mean that it's no observation? Does it mean that it's no observation when brain start to thinking what is anger about, what is sad about? It's not observation, it's just going.
No, that's not observation. That's just chattering. Observation is a very naked awareness. In other words, it's not clothing it with excuses or ideas or judgments or anything. It's just seeing things, how they actually are in this moment, without judgment, without any, making it into something more. At that point, when anger, for example, arises, we should just see it as it is. And then from that we can decide what to do at this particular point. But the one thing we shouldn't do is to either suppress it down and pretend to ourselves we're not angry, or to think it's justified. I'm quite right, why shouldn't I be angry? I deserve to be angry. And then, that just creates more and more and more problems. But sometimes, because we're feeling very upset, and we don't have the strength to, at that point, apply an antidote, right, to the poison, then it is recommended, for example, by Shantideva, that we should act like a block of wood. In other words, if we can't deal with that situation at that moment, it's overwhelming, just don't react. Then, while we're not making positive karma, we're not making negative karma, we just stay there. Breathing in, breathing out. And then, when we're a little more calm, then we can go forward. And that's actually quite good advice, because sometimes when we are really caught up in very strong emotion, it's very difficult to transform it. But if we just don't react at all, if we just wait.
But sometimes it's happening that the person trying to be quiet, but in reality is suppressing the emotion. So and cannot see the difference.
Well, the thing is that, the whole point of meditation is to really look into the mind. So, for example, if we had, like a very upsetting episode, and we, at that time, suppress the anger, we discovered later. I mean, it's still there. Then, when you're sitting in meditation, you could replay that, and then see what feelings come up, and in that more unthreatening environment while you're sitting in your meditation, after you quieten your mind, then bring up this upsetting incident. And at that point, one can see it much more clearly, where it went wrong, and if the feeling of frustration and anger arises, now you're not in you're in a safe environment in which you can look at it and bring it out and just say, hello, anger, you're looking very upset. What's your problem? Come on, tell me what it is. So you can look at the anger with friendliness without encouraging it, just so it can speak what it feels. And from that, you can go forward more skillfully in how one should really respond in a skillful way, which doesn't create more problems. These emotions are very deep inside us. They don't just, the minute we think, oh, anger is not good for us, they don't just disappear. They're very, very deep. From a scientific point of view, they're very deep neural pathways, which with our habitual propensities, which have extended over lifetimes. So just thinking, yes, it's not good to be angry, I must be kind and compassionate. you know, what would lead to it would be a suppression of the truth. So, I mean, that is not also very helpful because eventually, like a volcano, it just erupts. But, I mean, on the other hand, if we are overwhelmed by emotions at some point, just to step back and not respond, even though the anger is bubbling underneath, more problems, then we can go away and sit down and look at the situation in a more controlled, safe environment and see what's really going on inside us. Because we have to see ourselves as we really are and not pretend, you know, to be more than we are. Which is why other people are so useful. Because if we are only by ourselves or we're only with people who are really lovely people and always very nice and very kind, then that's very nice, but it's very easy to be nice to people who are nice. And then we think, oh, actually I'm a very nice person. I don't get upset, I don't get angry. Look, I'm nice. Everybody loves me. Because I'm so nice.
Very important.
Yeah, it's very important. So those people who create problems for us, who really press our buttons, who really upset and annoy us, far from being an obstacle to our practice, are on one level like spiritual teachers for us, because they show us how are we going to practice patience and compassion, loving kindness, if we don't have people who are difficult. Patience in the Buddhist path is a very, very important quality. This patient forbearance, you know, tolerance, not getting upset just because people say or do things we don't like, but just allowing that to happen without getting all upset inside. How can we cultivate that? How can we practice that if we don't meet with people who are difficult? Circumstances which are difficult. It's very important. It's really, really very important. Far from resenting people who are difficult, we can take them onto the path. They are our practice. I say it's like going to a gym. You know, you go to a gymnasium and you work on those difficult machines. You know, you see people there, sweat pouring out. You know, why? I mean, they even pay for that, you know. I mean, they're in pain. But why? Because they know it's going to make them strong. And they're going to feel so much better. So difficult people, difficult circumstances are our gymnasium, our spiritual gymnasium. That's where we work out. Right? And we don't want it too easy. Because if it's easy, then we don't get strong. So it's just the other side of it, you know. We need people to upset us in order to cultivate this beautiful quality of, you know, tolerance and understanding and not getting upset in the face of difficult people, difficult circumstances. So good, you know, it's all good. Everything which happens to us, we can use. Nothing, nothing, nothing needs to be discarded. Everything can be helpful if we have the right attitude. But this is why it's very helpful to cultivate awareness, because then whatever comes up, we see it with a clarity and spontaneously know how to respond in a skillful way. But if we're all over the place, then it's very difficult to see clearly. So it's why people sit and meditate, you know, it's to give a clarity to their mind.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Nowadays, very few people have the opportunity just to stay, you know, in a nice, quiet environment. Most people their whole life is a challenge. So the only thing to do is to just, you know, put it all into focus like a camera. You know, you have to put it into focus. So there's a clarity to it. Then it's not so difficult. So where are you going from here?
Maybe last question about your way. What was your motivation when you started the study Buddhism?
My motivation?
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean...
What do you feel?
I felt this was the path I had been looking for. I mean, I read my first book on Buddhism when I was 18. And until then I had been exploring various spiritual paths, but they all presumed the existence of a creator outside of ourselves that we had to be so grateful to. And since I didn't believe in that, and I had never believed in that, I assumed that I would have to discover my own spiritual path for myself. So then when I came to Buddhism, which of course is non-theistic, I was just so grateful to the Buddha for having shown a path, a very valid path which undertook everything, you know, our conduct and our mind and wisdom, without the need for, you know, some external deity pulling all the strings. That, you know, what happens to us and how we respond is governed by karma, not by some external agency. So, yeah, I mean, when I read about Buddha Dhamma, I was halfway through the book and I said to my mother, I'm a Buddhist. And she said, well, that's nice, dear, finish reading the book. Then you can tell me all about it. So, I mean, right from the start, I knew this was, I had always known this, I just hadn't known there was a path which said it so clearly. And so, yeah, so then I recognized that this was the most important thing in all the world, and I should give it everything else up in order to follow that. So that's why I came to India. Here we still are. 55 years later.
It's so beautiful place, yeah. It's so beautiful place now.
Yeah, it took time, but yeah.
One more question. How not to lose yourself under the strong influence of other people in your life? I mean, about on your boss, on the job, or your partner, with whom you are. For example, if you have different point of view on some things, how not to lose yourself and agree with another person, but you don't want to do it. Under the strong influence.
I think that there are some times when you have to compromise and say, okay, you know, it's not that important. I don't agree. In my heart, I'm not agreeing, but if it means something to you, then fine. And, you know, we'll go along with that, why not? But if it's something really, really important, and you absolutely don't agree, then you should stand up for yourself. You know, you should say, well, I don't agree. And I mean, you know, you can't agree to, as I say, minor things you can agree to. I mean, all right, I don't really agree, but it's all right, that makes you happy. But if it's something really important, then you have to keep your own integrity. You know, you have to stand up for what you believe. Nicely, politely, but firmly. Truly, it's important, you know, because we should not be dominated by others when we feel that what they are wanting is not right. This is not right for us. You know, we have to be clear in our own mind.
Sometimes you have fear inside because when somebody not agree with you and it's real, yes, I know, but sometimes a fear and stop but then for sure understand that okay, you should go and you should tell what's important for you.
Yes, so then again, you know, look in your own heart, see what is really meaningful for you, and just say to the fear, sorry fear, we're going ahead anyway, you know, and be fearless.
And without angry.
Without angry with anything. I mean, just recognize that everybody sees things differently.
Yeah.
You know, we can't expect everyone's going to see things the way we see things. But it's also important to have a few friends who do see things the way you see things. You know, the Buddha very much emphasized the importance of good friends. Good friends meaning people who have basically the same spiritual values, right?
Yeah.
So most of the work, even at the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, even then he said that anyone practicing the spiritual path is like a fish swimming upstream when all the rest of the fish are swimming downstream. So that was then. So imagine now. So it's a lonely journey on one level. So it's good if you get a few more fish to swim upstream with you. Because society is going in one direction, and people who are genuinely interested in qualities are going to be going in the opposite direction. What is important for one person is going to be of irrelevance to another. But you have to accept that. It's always been like that, you know, and nowadays in the modern world it's more so. But nonetheless, you don't sacrifice your own inner integrity. And just find a few people with you who see things like that too. You can all hold hands. But then, you know, if you say to somebody, well, this is your view, this is how you see it, that's perfectly valid, it's not how I see it. Just say that. I mean, there doesn't have to be any anger there, or even defense. You know, you don't have to defend your views. You can just state them. This is how I see it, and that's that. You know, you don't see it that way, but I don't see it your way, so we have to agree to differ. And then often, if you do like that, people come to a compromise, and they begin to get more interested in what you're thinking, because you're not challenging, you know, there's no conflict there. You're just stating that's how I see it. And that's, yeah, fair enough.
Absolutely perfect explanation, as per me.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, this world is not, you know, this world has never been, you know, that great. And it's not on one level improving that much. But nonetheless, it is considered to be, because the human realm has this mixture of difficulties and suffering and pleasures and happiness. You know, it's both. It's not so, for most people, it's not overwhelmingly terrible. But on the other hand, it's also not totally joyful. There's a mixture between the two. And therefore, it's considered to be spiritually the best plane on which to be born. Better than the heaven realms. Because we have challenges here, which they don't have in higher realms. So, you know, therefore we should not try totally to, I mean, it's not that we have to punish ourselves, but when things are difficult, then we should recognize this is when we have to be strong and you know, deal with these problems in an intelligent way, which won't create more problems. And be kind to yourself too. It's very important when we talk about kindness. The Buddha said that we start with giving loving kindness to ourselves. We have to make friends with ourselves, encourage ourselves, believe in ourselves. It's very important. When we have a sense of friendliness and well-being, you know, with all our faults and all our problems, everybody has faults and problems, no problem. That's not the problem. The problem is we have to, you know, forgive ourselves, accept ourselves, be friendly towards ourselves, be at peace peace within ourselves, then we can give to others. To those we love, towards those we're indifferent towards, and towards people that we don't really like. And then towards everybody. We have to start here. This is not some new age thing. This is the Buddha said. Start with giving loving kindness and compassion and appreciation first to yourself. Then you become strong. Because you've got a good friend. You know? I mean, we cannot leave ourselves behind. Even in our dreams, we take ourselves with us. So at least we should be healthy inside. And have a good friend. You know? It's very important. Really. You start by being kind to yourself. And towards everybody else.
Some complex question regarding, I mean, kind of karmic view. So, how to find it? That's the first part. And the second, if you realize that you have to serve to people, it's probably more easy to serve when you're a spiritual person. But if you live in material world, like you're a businessman and earn lots of money and works in this heavy energy and so on, so how to serve people in the right way, how to make them happy, because when you give them money, they want to be happy. So
But if you're nice, I mean, if you make them laugh, and if you're friendly towards them, and if you accept them how they are, they'll probably be happy. You don't need to give them money. You can just be kind. You can be friendly. You can be non-judgmental. You know?
but if I'm good in earning money, so I have to
So
spend
then
it.
you can use it.
Yeah.
I mean, a friend of mine, he is a businessman. He loves making money. And so he's in the financial world. And then he, at a certain point, he realized he actually had enough money for himself, but he loved making it. So now he and his whole business, they make money, and then all the profits he gives to charity. And all his employees can decide which, where they want to give the money. They earn the money and then they decide who they're going to give it to. So then they're happy. He's happy making money, and then they're also happy giving it away. He gives 100% of all the profits away. And so they enjoy making money in order to benefit many, many beings.
Sounds good to me.
Well, he's a nice guy. And he's happy because he likes, as I say, being a businessman. And at the same time, it gives some purpose, to make lots and lots of money and benefit many, many organizations and people who need money. So it's, in that sense, a win-win situation, isn't it? I mean, money in itself is not good or evil, right? Money and things are really very innocent, right? They're not the guilty part. The guilty part is the grasping at money, right? The attachment. That's the difficult bit. As it says in the Bible, the love of money is the root of evil. Not the money is not. You can do anything with money. You can do good things, you can do evil things. Depends where you put your money. But the problem is when we grasp at things, we grasp at people, we grasp at money, we grasp at status, we grasp at all these things. It's the grasping which is the problem, not the things themselves. So you can have a vast amount, but if you're not attached to it, then if you lose it tomorrow, it doesn't matter. You can have just nothing, and you're grasping at it, and then if you lose it, you feel heartbroken. So it's not the, it's not the things it's our attitude towards the things which is the problem.
What's the fringe? What's the border between hobby and grasping to money or attachment?
Hobby.
What's the fringe between hobby and grasping to money, attachment to money?
Well, I mean, a hobby is something which you do, apart from your main work, as something for, that you enjoy doing. Like if you take up anything, painting, music, playing golf, or anything that you enjoy doing. I mean, that you're doing because you enjoy doing it. You're not doing it for any commercial reason. I mean, that's the point with a hobby. Unlike a profession, it's something which you do because you enjoy doing it. But then you could also make your business into like a hobby, insofar as you're not doing it in order to gain that much, but you're doing it in order because you enjoy doing it. Like, sort of on a way, like, somebody who does a job of work which they really love doing. I mean, it merges the difference between a pastime and a profession. So any profession that we do, if we do it because we love doing it, then it's very different than if we're doing it purely for the monetary worth of it or the status or something like that, which I think is what makes people so stressed. They're always trying to achieve a goal. So if we enjoy what we're doing, then that's, it's a joy.
Thank you very much. I love what I'm doing.
Great. And if it doesn't harm others, of course you might be a burglar or a butcher and you might love that.
Mhm.
And that would be very negative. But provided that what you love is something which is positive and doesn't cause any harm to others, or might even be a benefit to others, then that's the very best way to be. To live your life enjoying what you're doing and at the same time benefiting yourself, benefiting others. That's great. Anyway, my dears, very nice to meet you all. How long are you in